Here we go. Here we go on a Friday. And you know, I love Friday in general. Who doesn't? You get set for the weekend, you're good to go. But this one just feels different. It feels different for a couple of different reasons. Number one, if you're not downtown right now, first off, if you're not downtown, like, I'm going to call for a collective effort from Indianapolis. Was just talking about this with J&V yesterday. Downtown for so long was so electric and so fun in Indianapolis, and it really was what separated us from so many different cities. You talk to different people. You're in an airport. You're talking to some guy, and he's like, so where are you from? You're like, I'm flying back home to Indianapolis. The guy's like, oh, really? Yeah, what about yourself? Where are you from? Well, I'm actually from Phoenix, but I had a work convention in Indianapolis once. Boy, it's great. That downtown's awesome. You walk around all the restaurants and everything. It's great. It's beautiful. For so long, that's what separated Indianapolis from everywhere else. And now, and I get it, I mean, but there's just fewer people that are working downtown since COVID and et cetera, and as a result, a lot of the restaurants have left, and it is admittedly kind of a shell of itself. So when you work downtown, it is fun to drive into work and actually have to stop at the crosswalk because people are crossing the street and there's activity and there's buzz. And right now there are 165,000 kids in FFA coats walking around.
All outside the Chick-fil-A, by the way.
All outside the Chick-fil-A and the Taco Bell that's right there. And the Taco Bell, by the way, is apparently out of Baja Blast today. So the FFA kids have taken that all out of there.
Do you think they go Cantina style, Mark Vandermeer, or do you think these kids are being put to bed by about 11 o'clock?
The latter for sure.
Oh, dang it.
For sure, yep. They are all back in the hotel early. But then you have the Taylor Swift phenomenon. Mm-hmm. So you got street signs being changed, and that's still not until next weekend, right?
Correct.
But, you know, you can feel the buzz and the energy for that. There's all this stuff going on, and that's not even the sports calendar, because the biggest show in town would be the Colts, and they are obviously on the road in Houston. And that's only the biggest show because it's in the midst of their season. The Pacers are 1A in terms of big shows. They are at home on Sunday, but Joel Embiid and Paul George are not going to be here. And then you have the college football world. And think about some of the games in college football this week. College football, to me, I don't know when this came to be, but I've just decided that college football, it is the best thing going. On Saturday nights, you get back and, you know, the old Pac-12, I know the Pac-12 doesn't exist anymore, but the West Coast games are still on, and you're waiting to see a couple of upsets brewing. It's awesome. Everything about it is cool, right?
Now, do you feel like your opinion on that, though, and be honest here, was it all swayed because you're still riding the high of the week anniversary of meeting the Duck? Like, do we think that we're not calculating that at all in this?
That's an outstanding point. That changed everything for me. No, because I thought that I was going to go and see a crowd rush. I thought for sure, or a field rush. I thought Shannon and I were going to be swinging from the goalposts, and by the time it was 14-0, 2 minutes into the game, I thought, well, maybe not. But there are some big games, notably, you know, Notre Dame and Navy's a big one. And
when's the last time that game, like maybe
that
ever?
Both were ranked?
Well, both were ranked, but also that I guess it is the first time ever they've both had playoff hopes, because Navy hasn't been in the playoff conversation before. Correct. Since it's been in its existence. And
well, certainly there have been years in the college football playoff that Navy and Notre Dame played where a loss to Navy would have derailed Notre Dame.
Indeed.
But you didn't think it was a possibility, right? Navy's good, and Army's good, and, you know, there are only 3 teams in college football. Only 3 teams in college football that have won all their games by double digits.
Wow.
Would you like to guess the 3, Jimmy?
So
show's over at 3.
Yeah, I'll pass.
Eddie, would you like to guess one of the 3?
Is this team undefeated
if not,
as
you
well?
Can just throw a guess out there, please.
Indiana.
Well, clearly they'd be. Oh yes.
Oh yeah. Of course.
I'm sorry. I should have prefaced that. There are 3 undefeated teams who have won all of their games by at least 10 points.
Indiana would be a mutual guess there. Yeah.
Go ahead, Eddie. All right, Indiana's 1.
Navy.
Navy is 2.
Army.
And Army is 3.
Yay.
There's your 3 right there.
Thanks, Eddie.
So Navy and Army is going to be a huge game coming up once we get in towards the end of the year, because it is possible that both of them are going to be playing within the college football playoff parameter.
And they might play twice.
What's that?
They might play twice. They could play in their conference championship game and then the traditional Army-Navy game as well.
Are they both in a conference now?
Yes.
Okay, because I was thinking that one of them was still independent. Then you have other ranked games. I mean, you have Illinois and Oregon. You have Missouri and Alabama. So there are big games. Oklahoma is not ranked, but they're at Ole Miss. There are big games this weekend. None of them apparently, bigger than what's taking place in Bloomington with College Game Day going down to take on Bloomington. Washington at Indiana. And people have been asking me, I mean, that game is a noon kick. And I've had people ask me, like, what time do we need to get down there? And I'm like, if you're not down there by, 7?
I think, it depends if you're trying to go to game day. If
what
you're
time
trying
does
to go
game day go on the air?
Is it
9.
7 or is it 9?
9. They go on air at 9.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm getting down there. This being IU on campus, Curt Cignetti finally having the student body fully behind him, based on previous game day experiences for me, I would say you have to get there no later than 4:30 or 5 if you realistically want to be a part of the crowd. Now, if you just want to be on campus, yeah, sure, 7, you're probably good. But, like, those people are going to camp outside for game day. Like, that's a thing.
Oh.
So, Eddie, did you make a decision, by the way? Are you going down? You discussed earlier in the week.
Yeah, we are.
Have you arranged your travel arrangements?
I believe we're going to be there before 8 o'clock.
Okay. Yeah, you'll still be able to enjoy campus and, like, have a great time. But if you're trying to be a part of game day, I hope I'm not overselling what I anticipate from the IU fan base. But I think that's going to be as raucous as anything for the game day set.
Yeah, you're talking about the culmination of, look, Indiana football. There's nobody who has made more mockery of Indiana football over the years than myself. When I was a student at Indiana, I'll go further back. When I was really young, my buddy Andy Burt, one of my best friends at Allisonville Elementary School.
So the first half century of your life.
The first half decade of my life. Well,
was it well into the first half decade of your life at that point or no?
Certainly the first decade and then into the second decade of my life. Andy Burt, the pride of Brebeuf and Hanover. When we were kids, his grandfather was on the Board of Trustees in Indiana, so his parents had IU football season tickets. And he would take me basically to every game. And I loved it. And they were terrible. Terrible. They had some success, obviously, with Lee Corso, but that was just before the era I'm talking about. Sam Weich was there, and then into Bill Mallory. In the early Bill Mallory years, they were terrible. And then, I was an avid follower of Indiana football. I loved it. I can still recall when they went to the All-American. Well, yeah, they began the first bowl game they went to under Mallory was the All-American Bowl. They lost to Florida State. And then after the All-American Bowl, which I don't even know if the All-American Bowl is still a thing, then they went to the Peach Bowl and lost to, I believe, Auburn. Then they went to the Liberty Bowl and lost and beat South Carolina. And Rob Turner, the dynamic wide receiver from Bishop Chatard High School, who is now a motorcycle police officer for IMPD and made headlines when President Trump was here. He was part of the motorcade where Rob Turner laid his bike down. Like he was going around a corner too fast and laid down his bike. He was okay. But that Rob Turner, dynamic player at Indiana. And they won the Liberty Bowl, and then after that they went back to the Peach Bowl, and they played Auburn once and Tennessee once. I don't remember in which order. Then they went to the Insight.com Bowl, which was then the Copper Bowl, and they blanked Baylor. And then after that they went to the Pull-On Weed Eater Independence Bowl and got blown out of the building by Virginia Tech. And that was kind of the end of the run. But when I was in college, I went to every game. We had a chart in my apartment where we kept track of the score, and we awarded a player of the game. I was all in on Indiana football. I was that guy, right? But it's a fan base and a program that has been thirsting for any relevancy because there have been flashes in the pan. The COVID year with Tom Allen, there have been little inklings here and there.
By the way, Michael Penix's Penn State W anniversary was yesterday. We missed that.
Unfortunately, that wasn't really it was a 2-point conversion, though, right?
Got it. Yeah, indeed. Successful.
But it is great now that Indiana and Curt Cignetti coming in. And I told you at the beginning of the year, I'm like, remember I said I made a declaration one day where I'm like, I'm going to buy into this guy. Part of that was their schedule. And this is, again, everything is just going Indiana's way because I think Washington is good. I don't think they're great. They clearly are not what they were a year ago, and they lost their coach. They lost transfers.
Are you apprehensive? Are you apprehensive without and I know we'll get into this at some point throughout the day, but are you apprehensive without Curtis Rourke?
No.
Not even a little bit?
No.
Okay. And I don't even mean that win or lose the game. I mean in terms of like...
So instead of 48, they drop 41.
Okay. So you're not at all then?
No.
All right.
No. Indiana...
I'm not saying they're going to lose because of it. I'm just asking if
their trap game is in East Lansing. That's their trap game. But Indiana is going to beat Washington, and they're going to beat them. It's going to be the classic Indiana game. They're going to get out to a lead and then just keep going. And they're going to have the attitude, the atmosphere alone is going to be unbelievable. It's going to be unbelievable. If I'm telling you right now, if you're going to the game to watch Indiana and Washington and College game day being there, I'm telling you right now, you 100% need to leave. This is the best case scenario. 2:00 today, get in your car. You're going to get an hour of the end of this program and then an hour of JMV, depending on how long you're going to be in your car. And then, of course, you take your phone with you and your mobile device or whatever it might be, and you get on 1075thefan.com, or you use any of the different apps that we're on to listen to the rest of JMV's show. But you need to leave today. If you're going down for game day, just leave now. Leave now, because by the time you get to just a little bit south of Martinsville, traffic jam, not going anywhere. I'm just telling you right now.
Yep.
And that's fine. That's the one time you drive down 37 or 69 or 67, whatever way you used to take back in the old days, and you're like, no, I'm going to go the creative way this time and go down through Mooresville and then slide it over behind that grocery store to Martinsville and then down. All those different routes that you used, all those different – I'm going to take Old State Road 37 because there's that one house that's painted like a clown, and that's fun. Whatever way you used to take to avoid traffic, you got frustrated because there was always traffic. There was construction. There was traffic. There was some kid with stickers all over his window getting pulled over by the Martinsville police and giving him his 7th ticket in a month. No, I don't know who that would have been, et cetera. And those times you got frustrated. These times, no frustration. Traffic is there, and it's not going to be because you're on 69, but even if there's like terrible traffic, all good, because it's all for the right reasons, because my understanding is 565,000 people going down tomorrow. It's going to be awesome. Everything about it's awesome. And Indiana's going to roll Washington. I'm telling you.
I think they're going to win. I'm very excited for the entire IU fan base. In fact, recommendation, they're going to be packed. All of Kirkwood's going to be packed. But if you're looking for a little brunch spot, you're trying to sneak that in during game day or after game day, hit up the Village Deli. Good folks over there. One of my favorite spots over on Kirkwood for the whole breakfast scene. But
do they have beer there?
At Village Deli? No.
Yeah. Nah, see, pregame, Jimmy, and nothing against Village Deli. Pregame, though, people are all going to be going to bars. Period, right?
I totally understand that, but you gotta continue to carb up a little bit, Jake. Let's not totally lose ourselves before kick. You want to lose yourself once you're there, by all means, but let's.
It's good. Listen, you go to Tennessee, you go to Alabama, you go to Texas A&M, you go to Clemson. Those places are a whole different world of tailgate and whatever else. Indiana has always been kind of a poser tailgate place because it's actually just people down there to like hang out and celebrate and drink, and they're not actually there for the football itself until now. That's all changed. And tomorrow is when Indiana cements itself as a football school. Indiana University, I'm not saying non-basketball school, but football school, right?
Yeah.
Who's the best school in America if you combine their football and basketball programs? What's the best athletic department? Probably Michigan.
Yeah.
Ohio State. Maybe.
You're talking right now or historically?
I mean, let's say the last 20 years.
Yeah, probably Michigan.
What's a school that if you go to it, you're getting upper echelon basketball and upper echelon football? You're a Final Four contender and you're a playoff contender. Probably one of those, right?
Yeah.
Indiana, baby, throws its hat in the ring.
Tennessee?
Yeah, Tennessee's a good one. Tennessee actually is kind of the opposite, right? In the fact that their basketball program now is like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
But Indiana has thrown its hat in the ring. Move over, everybody else. Here come the fighting Hoosiers. And look, I know that Purdue people are like, look, quit talking about. I was at Ross-Ade. I had the Purdue hat on.
You did. This is true.
I looked so. Here's
you just
the thing.
finished the class you were teaching to get over there. You took some time.
So sympathy as a Purdue. I looked so much like a Purdue fan that game. I looked so much like a Purdue fan that the Duck took sympathy on me. The Duck came up and hugged me. It was awkward. I just wanted a photo, and the Duck is hanging all over me. I mean, and listen. That's happened to me in the past. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've had a good run, but the Duck was all over me, and I think it was because the Duck's like this poor bastard. Like look at him. He's dressed in all black. He's got on a Purdue hat, and it's 21-0, and it's like 5 minutes into the game.
Could have also been the cologne you chose that day. Maybe it was partial to the Duck census. Who knows?
Might have been because I did the disco duck earlier that day. We're going to take a big look, obviously, at the Colts game coming up on Sunday in Houston, taking on the Texans. We've talked all week about just the magnitude of the game itself, the players that we anticipate might be playing. I'm excited, actually, for our former Colt Friday because we'll talk a little bit about this game, but it's a guy that played at Washington. And I realize he probably isn't, when you think of the great Colts teams, Larry Triplet is not one of the names that immediately jumps to mind, although he was a nice, solid player for the Colts, but just a good dude. Just a good dude, lives out west, and when I reached out to him, he said, yeah, I'll do it live. And I said, well, it's going to be, you're 3 hours behind. He's like, oh, no, I get up at like 5 in the morning. So not only a good dude, but apparently neurotic.
Are you going to drop the emphatic, I use beating down Washington right out of the gate with him, or are you going to save that for midway through? Okay.
No, he knows that. Okay. I'm not going to double down on that. I'm going to triplet down on that.
Nice.
That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm just telling you right now.
Well done.
But Colts Texans, Jimmy, we talked about it clearly. This is a big one on Sunday.
If you want any hope of winning the AFC South and you want to be in control of that hope, you need to get a win on Sunday. And you need to get it against a team that, by and large, is still picked by many to be that dark horse team that represents the AFC in the Super Bowl. A lot of people like this Texans team, like the way they're constructed. C.J. Stroud has continued to show signs of his brilliance, even though his weapons haven't been there every single week. They're going to, in general, even without Nico Collins, still have the ability to test this Colts secondary through the air, whether it's with Tank Dell or Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon on the ground. You knew how impactful he was week one. So for the Colts, and it depends on where the final practice report leads us, but if you're able to get everybody back, I think this has the potential to be an offensive shootout. If you can sustain drives, we talked about it with Matt Taylor yesterday, make things easy on Anthony Richardson early. Get him comfortable. Get him in a bit of a rhythm. Let the game come to him. Don't fully take away his ability to tuck and run or be the dynamic quarterback they want him to be, but get him set up in a rhythm like he was against the Steelers, like he was going to be against Houston the first time, and then see what happens. But to that end, Jake, if they want the idea of a home playoff game, if they want the idea of winning the AFC South, Eddie pointed out how the Texans' schedule is no slouch either, and that's a fair point, but you could make the case based on roster construction, based on overall talent. The Texans are more equipped to handle Kansas City or a New York or who they have on the rest of the schedule than the Colts are over this 5-game stretch. So playoff dreams aren't dead on Sunday if you drop, but your margin for error in winning for the South switches to rooting for the Colts every week to hoping the Texans, totally poop the bed.
It's a very good point. It's a very good point. You obviously are wanting to put yourself in position where you need the least outside help. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough down there, right? But do we know any diehard Texans fans? Do you think there are diehard Texans fans? Is everybody in Houston actually an Oilers fan and a Titans fan?
I got to imagine there's some diehard Texans fans. I got to imagine there's... Look, even if you're not diehard, you would say you're diehard at this stage, right? You finally have a good quarterback. You're, again, picked by many to be a contender this year. I don't see why not if you're in the Houston area, why you wouldn't be like, yeah, Toro's cool.
By the way, practice underway for the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Jonathan Taylor practicing.
Nice.
So that's 3 straight days. He was a full participant yesterday. DeForest Buckner was not practicing today.
Okay.
So DeForest Buckner is back on the sideline. We'll go over the full rundown of...
No, he's in DeForest.
Who's in, that's right, of who's in and who's out.
Seeing him
coming
activated,
up in just a minute here.
Seeing him activated off the 21-day practice window, or sorry, let me rephrase. Seeing the 21-day practice window opened earlier this week A team's not going to do that unless they're confident the player is close to coming back. I'm not worried about Buckner going on season-ending IR unless he has a setback of some kind. But just because the window was activated doesn't mean he's going to go this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if they once again tamper that and he's back next week.
Jimmy.
Yes.
I don't mean to stop you and be Debbie Downer here, okay? But we have a memo from the Indianapolis Chamber of Commerce, the Indianapolis Capital Improvement Board, and the Indianapolis Colts.
Wow.
Okay.
That's big.
Based on the functionality of Lucas Oil Stadium, we've been asked to not use the phrase "window is opening." Okay.
Okay. That's on me.
Because even though that was open the other day,
the window does open.
Even though that was open the other day, the roof is still, and so we don't know about the overall state of the window as well, and so therefore we don't make any promises.
Hypothetical, just to make sure we're all on the legal lines there of that memo. If, for example, somebody had a knee injury, Jake, and you were talking about how you wanted to get the swelling down, you were talking about drainage from the knee. Would that also be a sensitive spot considering the state of the
that is correct.
The field and
we
everything?
Don't mention drainage
okay,
either,
right,
Jimmy.
Make sure. All right.
Right? Yeah. Hey, Jake, if Richardson looks extremely inferior to C.J. Stroud this week and doesn't make any significant progress, are the Colts back in the market for a new franchise quarterback next year? No.
Not after this week, no.
We will not know until this time a year from now what direction things might be heading in terms of Anthony Richardson, because he is absolutely going to get and at this point, and we'll have this conversation later in the show, the kid glove's got to come off. Got to take off the training wheels.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson has done nothing wrong. He's been so far a good teammate, a good member of the community, all of it, right? He's done all the things that you want him to do, but the Colts aren't doing him any favors. They're babying him too much. They're making excuses for him. They are protecting him too much. At some point, you got to just say, you know what? Let it go. Like the old Ted Marchibroda, let it rip. And you got to do that, to be honest with you. And I think, and we'll talk about it over the course of today, I think they've made a few tactical errors in their approach and the way that they are developing Anthony Richardson. I want to let you know, by the way, when it comes to babying your car, Jiffy Lube is the absolute best place. Because not only does Jiffy Lube take care of you with the signature oil change, but they also now are saying, you know what, if you're somebody that babies your car to the point where you're making sure that it always looks great, we want to make sure it runs great. Let me explain. Now through the end of the year, if you are a member of one of the car wash programs, you get the sticker in the window, no problem. When you go to Jiffy Lube, you simply say to them, look, that sticker in the window tells you one thing about me. That tells you that I care about the outside of my car, so I want to make sure the inside is running great as well, but I don't want to pay top dollar. That's not an issue because Jiffy Lube says, hey, we get it. You're going to get $20 off a signature oil change and a free tire rotation with your oil change just by having one of those stickers in the window saying that you are a member of a monthly car wash program. Just point to it. The team member will take it from there. That is big savings for your one-stop shop for all your vehicle maintenance needs where you never need an appointment, talking about Jiffy Lube. All right. We'll get into who's in and who's out for the Colts this week. But on the other side, here's what I want to know. 239-1070 is the telephone number. Indiana fans, the platform is yours. The stage is yours. I want to know who's going to Bloomington. What I want to know is this. I want to know what time you're getting down there. I want to know where you're tailgating. I want to know where you're pre-gaming. And I want to know, how long you've been a diehard Indiana fan. I want game plans. I want strategies. I want tips. I want cathartic group project here on getting everybody to most enjoy the college football epicenter being in Bloomington, Indiana tomorrow. At 239-1070, we'll talk it all out, and we'll do it next. There we go, baby. Working for the weekend. How about this? Via the text line. Hey, Jake. I left at 7:30 last weekend, and the parking lot was full when I arrived in Bloomington. I spent $50 to park across the street at the church. That town doesn't handle that many people well, but having national programs there the last 2 weekends is surreal. Usually we've all checked out by now. This is totally cool. That's correct.
My
right?
dad texted us, Jake, and he brought up a good point. That's something, like how the NFL draft, they miscount or fake count or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. 780,000 people, yep.
Yeah, so he said tomorrow's attendance for the IU game, 1.2 million.
He's right? Hey, Jake, I was on a flight from Tampa yesterday. John Gruden was on the flight heading to Bloomington. I did know that Gruden's dad had coached with Lee Corso. They're doing a 50-year reunion. He was extremely excited about the game, and he was a gracious dude.
He put a video out on social media asking students to reach out to him and let him know where to meet him so that he could test their IU football.
He's wearing a red
knowledge.
polo and slacks. He looks like he works at State Farm. 239-1070, the telephone number. I want to hear from you IU fans that are jacked up, and we have a correction, by the way, on the Colts practice report, which we'll get to. But let's go to Isaac, who joins us. What's up, Isaac?
What's going on?
Isaac, you sound like a fun guy. Have you called the guy before, or have you called the program before?
I have not called the program before.
Who would you say is when people in your lifetime, how old a fella are you, Isaac?
I'm a 43-year-old gentleman from Crawfordsville.
Okay, 43-year-old Isaac. And by the way, just so you know, you are the director of physics for the program here. When your lifetime, when you say that your name is Isaac, do people more often mention Hayes or Newton?
Newton.
Okay, fair enough. What about Fig Newtons? Do you like Fig Newtons?
I do.
Okay, that's cool. All right, so Isaac, are you going to the game?
Yes.
How long have you been going to IU games? You're from Crawfordsville. Did you go to Wabash?
I did not go to Wabash. I did go to Purdue.
Okay, you went to Purdue. All right, so are you an IU fan?
I've been going for 3 years now.
Now, Isaac, I got to ask. If you're a Purdue grad or product and you grew up in Crawfordsville, what is it and what was the name of the person that lured you to become a fan of the Hoosiers football program?
Her name is Holly.
All right.
Well played.
Fair enough. Okay, so that said, give me your scoop. What time are you heading down? What's the game plan?
So we're heading down as soon as the high school football game gets over tonight. So we should be there by midnight, set up the tailgate, be ready to go by 6 a.m.
Now, wait a minute. Are you camping?
Yes.
Wow. That's dead. Do you do this every time, or are you just doing this preemptively because of game day?
For 3 years, I've been doing it.
Really? So you've become an IU football fan?
I'm a fan of all sports, and tailgating is something that I love to do. So last weekend we went to the Purdue game. On Thursday, camped there for 2 nights, drove down 4 a.m. on Saturday from West Lafayette to Bloomington, and tailgated right through the weekend.
Now, Isaac, just out of curiosity, was there any envy on your behalf that I got to meet the Duck?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
The Duck was cool, man. Okay. Secondly, Isaac, if you are, and I make this offer to people all the time, so don't necessarily take it completely like in stone. It's a little bit challenging now because of the roads that normally take you there and obviously some of the terrible things that have happened in the area and in the region. So I don't know that I can do it this year. But do you want me to put you in the Rolodex of potential tag-along guests for a Clemson road trip for tailgate purposes at Clemson?
100%.
Okay. Now, but Isaac, we got to play by my rules with that, and that includes bonsai trip on the way back. We literally leave and we stop 2 places. We listen to the same songs on the way back, and it's an 8.5-hour straight drive. You're cool with that?
100%.
Urinal canteen, you okay with that?
Say that again?
I have a canteen that I use in the car to avoid having to stop at rest areas, if you follow.
Stopping's not important.
Yes, Isaac is the best. All right, Isaac, go Hoosiers and root them on, and best of luck. Who's the football game tonight you're going to? What high school game?
North Montgomery at Southmont.
All right, well, big rivalry game. All right, enjoy that and travel safely, okay?
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, Isaac, who's joining us. All right, I like that. Leaving from high school football, driving out and camping out. The camping out, I mean, that's some serious commitment right there, Jimmy.
It's dedication, especially going cross-state, going from West Lafayette last weekend for that Thursday to Friday night affair to then making it down to Bloomington
I
for
should have
IU
asked
Nebraska?
Isaac how many Bell games he's been to. How many Bell games you been to?
1.
It's the best.
Yeah.
I went all 4 years of college because my buddy Brad Fields was at Wabash, and Wabash was 4-0 in the 4 years that I went.
We may need to give him a different title.
Uh-oh.
I don't know if director of physics is appropriate for how fun of a guy he seemed.
Well, that actually is. But here's the thing. You notice he was constantly moving from one place to the next. Do you know why? Because objects of motion stay in motion.
That's right.
Jeff.
Educate and entertain.
Jeff, how are you?
Hey, great. Just wanted to say go Hoosiers. Went down to the game last week. I think as everybody that was there said, it was absolutely incredible. Had a blast. Disappointed I won't be going tomorrow.
Now, why are you not going tomorrow, Jeff?
Well, I'll be going to the north side for a birthday party. Don't get me into that. Very disappointing. We will be watching.
Are you related to the birthday person?
I am. So, yeah, it's an obligation.
Okay,
But
hold on, Jeff. Let me ask you this. What year birthday is it?
5.
Oh,
Okay, then that's understandable. If you'd have said, if you'd have said 23, I'd have been like, come on, man. 5, understandable. You got to be there. Okay, that's fair.
Absolutely. So the good news is, about 2 months ago, before IU really picked up steam, we got online and purchased some cheap tickets to the Ohio State game just to go see the stadium, frankly. So obviously really looking forward to that and curious if anybody's been there, if they have any tips on places to go.
Actually, Ohio State is pretty cool, to be honest with you. Jeff, I'm going to be honest with you. I hate Ohio State.
Me too.
Just all the culture of
Same.
it. And I have friends that are big Ohio State fans, and they know that I hate Ohio State. But and I forget. High Street. High Street is, build your own joke on that. But High Street is right off the campus there. There's a bunch to do right there along, right off of. I don't have the names of any particular places. You'll have to look that up.
Eddie has a timeshare on that street.
Yeah, that's right. Tons of atmosphere, Jeff, in Columbus. So that's cool. Now the other question is this, Jeff. When you bought your tickets, you said you went on as soon as the schedule came out, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Do you mind me asking this? What did you pay for your tickets to Indiana, Ohio State?
So that was one of the attractions. IU was the cheapest game by far. I mean, like I said, we were just looking at the schedule and thought, let's go see Buckeye Stadium. They were $80 to sit in the corner about halfway up.
Okay,
Nice.
now the question becomes this, Jeff. I'm looking right now. We're going to see what those tickets are now going for with Indiana being, in the mix, right? So I'm looking now. When is that game?
November 23rd.
Okay, here we go. 2 tickets. Oh, wow. You said where are your seats exactly?
I don't know the section. They're in the corner, kind of right at the corner of the end zone.
High up or mid-level?
About mid-level.
Okay, here we go. Those bad boys right now are going for $167 or $225 a piece.
Not bad. Not bad at all. No, I'll take it. And honestly, no matter we wouldn't sell them. I'm so excited to be there with IU being a competitive team that
it is cool. I'm sorry, Jeff. Did you say you went to IU?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was there for the Randall L years. We used to walk across. I lived in the Villas. We used to walk right into the stadium on Thursday evening, kick field goals. Nobody cared.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. You could have done that Saturday morning in those years, right? I mean, let's be real, right?
Yes, you're probably right.
All right, Jeff, happy birthday. Whose birthday is it? Give me the name.
It's Amelia Meraldo.
Amelia. All right, happy birthday, Amelia. Buy her a book of Amelia Bedelia. She'll love it when she's a little bit older. But happy 5th birthday to Amelia, and travel safe, Jeff. All right, when you go to Ohio State, and enjoy certainly the atmosphere in Columbus. It is pretty cool. All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back. We will let you know there has been an amendment, an adjustment, an edit, if you will, to the Colts practice for today. And it's actually good news for Colts fans. We'll explain. Okay, so we had mentioned earlier that DeForest Buckner and Jonathan Taylor, that there was a difference in terms of the workload for the two of them today at Colts practice. Good news is this. Clarification from our friend of the show, James Boyd, and the fact that DeForest Buckner is now practicing. Might have been like maybe a later jump out there for him in terms of getting out onto the practice field. But DeForest Buckner, who, of course, is coming off of the IR into that 21-day window now, is, in fact, practicing. So, too, is Josh Downs. Josh Downs practicing. Pittman, Braden Smith, and Grover Stewart are not. But DeForest Buckner, Josh Downs, and Jonathan Taylor are all in. That is good news for the Colts. Thank you. Larry Triplet, by the way, going to join us about 15 minutes from now on Former Colt Friday. By the way, I wanted to check in. I was sending out an all-point bulletin for Indiana fans that are going down to the game, many of which have actually been down there since Tuesday, camping out. And I wanted to reach out to Bill Benner, long time, of course, Bill Benner needs no introduction in Indianapolis, but I'm going to give him one anyway. Long-time columnist at the Indianapolis Star, has worked also with the Indianapolis Business Journal and for a number of different places, notably the Indiana Pacers in his later career. And as far as I know, and I don't know this for a fact, Bill Benner, who joins us on the program, can correct me. Bill, you've been a season ticket holder at Indiana football since 1946. Is that correct?
Well, not quite, Jake. Actually, I didn't become a season ticket holder until I left the Indianapolis Star in 2001. So, having said that, certainly I had to be an objective journalist during my time working for the Star, but for whatever reason, I've had an affinity for IU football all the way back to my teenage days when I first went to Bloomington and the Memorial Stadium on a high school trip. And I was always an IU. I always wanted to go to IU, and for some reason, I've always wanted Indiana to succeed in football. And again, during my newspaper days, I certainly covered them with all due objectivity, but nonetheless, I still have always wanted to see them win. And then again, since 2001, we've been season ticket holders.
How many games, if you had to just estimate off the top of your head, Bill, how many games have you sat through, like on those rainy 42-degree late October days where Indiana's down 21-0 in the third quarter to Michigan State and there's 18,000 people left in the stands? How many of those games have you sat through?
Well, countless. Probably easily in the dozens. The most notable one comes to mind, because it comes to mind from last week, was the Nebraska IM Hip game. And Indiana had knocked off Washington the week before, and came into the game highly thought of. And I think the final score was like 73-17, and it rained, and it was 28-0 before you could even get wet. It was awful. And so, yeah, I've walked out of Memorial Stadium many times, shaking my head. You know, like the Rutgers game last year, homecoming game. You expected it to be competitive, and I think it ended up being 35-14 or something like that, where they were never in the game. And so this year, and we also, Jake, my friends and I, we also do a road trip every year. So we've been to.
Oh, so it's not just a home glutton for punishment. That's cool.
We went to Nebraska 2 years ago, and it was a great experience. The fans were great.
They are great.
The stadium was great. But of course, the Hoosiers got their butts kicked. But we went, and our road trip this year was Pasadena. I have not yet missed a game this year, because we went to Pasadena, we went to Northwestern, and my buddy Jim Aiken from Connorsville and I will be at Michigan State next week. So we've already got tickets.
Bill, here's the thing. Bill Benner, our guest, you know, we knew going in, Curt Cignetti just had this mojo about him. The schedule has helped, but Indiana clearly is really good. I mean, they're one of three unbeatens who have won every game by double digits this year. They're playing great football. There's an energy. There's a vibe. I just think there are so many people that when you think about Lee Corso's teams, you think about some of the guys that have played there and maybe were really good players but on bad teams. You know, they just lost Tim Clifford, who was the quarterback that took them to the Holiday Bowl in 1979. And I think about yourself. This is for so many people. Who knows how long this goes? Who knows how long Kurt Signetti's in Bloomington? I don't know the answers to any of those things. I simply know there's a lot of people that deserve to be able to enjoy it in the moment, and I'm happy for them. And certainly for you, because, I mean, you got a lot of karma on your side in this one.
Well, Jake, I say two things. One, I'm going to ride the wave until it crashes on the beach. And my buddy Jim that I just referred to, I mean, we're standing there next to each other as the score mounts, and we go, it's 42-7. It's 49-7.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
56-7, and we're just shaking our head. But with Indiana football, I tell everybody this: I never look further ahead than the next play. And so the next play is kickoff at noon against Washington, and we'll see what transpires from there. But this team has been absolutely remarkable. Jake, I think every time an opponent has scored, Indiana has answered. I mean, that's just an amazing achievement. You referred to the fact that they've not trailed in a game yet. They've won every game by at least double digits. I mean, we just, having been there during the down days, which have been many, this puts a smile on my face and a shake to my head. It's hard to conceive, but hey, here we go, and we'll see what happens Sunday.
All right, Bill, ride the wave and then ride it all the way up to East Lansing. I worry that could be a trap game for the Hoosiers, but we shall see. But they're going to win easily tomorrow, and enjoy it. All right, you've certainly earned it, so enjoy it tomorrow. Okay.
Thanks for having me on, Jake. You're a good man. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Bill Benner, who, by the way, people don't realize this either. My understanding is he's going to be camping out in Dun Meadows starting in like 2 hours. He's pitching his tent, and then he'll be tailgating till kickoff tomorrow at noon. All right, former Colt Friday on the other side. Speaking of Indiana, they're taking on Washington, a guy that played for the Huskies, also was a Colt, and just a really good dude. Larry Triplet going to join us on the other side. It is a Friday. Feel Good Friday, by the way, from Franciscan Health. I'll have that for you coming up about 90 minutes from now. But we've been talking a lot about Indiana and, of course, Washington getting set tomorrow for the epicenter of the college football world. Colts in action in a huge AFC South tussle down in Houston to take on the Texans on Sunday. Joining us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line as part of our Former Colt Friday. Now, we're not supposed to call it the Former Colt Friday, right, Eddie? Is that right?
That's what Mike Vanderjagt told us, right?
That's right. But nonetheless, Former Colt Friday joining us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line. He is a guy that played collegiately at Washington, and this guy actually played it beautifully, gentlemen. This guy did it exactly as I say. What do I always tell you? If I was in the NFL, I would at least go and have tryouts or do something with some clubs just to load up on all of the free swag. And I would get the free bag, and I'd load it up with hats and shirts and shorts and everything else. And the team of which I would do that because they have the best logo, Jimmy, would be?
The Seattle Seahawks.
That is correct, the Seattle Seahawks, which is exactly what Larry Triplet did at the end of his NFL career, and I'm hoping that he has a ton of Seahawks stuff. But he joins us now on the show. Larry, how are you?
I'm doing great, and yes, I do have a ton of Seahawks stuff. I love Seahawks.
So collegiately, I guess it's funny because you grew up in the Los Angeles area. For a guy that grew up in Los Angeles and played collegiately in Seattle, probably the last place you thought you would end up living and being a part of the community would be Indianapolis, Indiana. But that's what happened, of course, when you were drafted in the second round in 2002. I guess first question would be, do you still follow the Colts actively, or are you back on the West Coast where it's harder to keep in touch?
Well, it's harder to keep in touch. I mean, definitely just with the time change, that makes it really tough, the 3-hour time difference. But I mean, I still follow the Colts. It's a fantastic organization. I can't speak more highly about just Mr. Irsay and just the whole organization. I love my time being in Indianapolis, from Tony Dungy to all the players. I miss Indy, if I'm honest.
Really? So did you ever think – now, life finds you living where today?
So I live in Northern California in the Bay Area, east of Oakland. And my family, I'm originally from the West Coast, as you said. My wife's from the Seattle area. That's why I got a lot of Seahawks stuff still. And so all my family's out west, and this is why we made the decision to move out here.
Are you sad that the A's left, by the way?
Yeah. I mean, what's happening to Oakland is horrible. I mean, the A's left, the Warriors left, the Raiders obviously left. I mean, it's just really – because Oakland is actually a fantastic city, great sports city. But all the teams are leaving, and it's just really sad.
Well, they're going to – now the A's are going to go play in like a AA stadium in Sacramento, right? Isn't that where they're going temporarily?
Yeah, but they're already gone. I mean, the whole area is just really dead there. It's really unfortunate just seeing just how bad that little area has turned into, especially when you go to other cities and you can see how – like, for example, I'm from L.A., right? And the Rams have totally revitalized Inglewood. Like, there's a reason why I'm not living in L.A. is because the way I grew up in Inglewood is not looking like what it looks like today.
Right.
But, and so, anyway, that could have happened here in Oakland, but maybe it will one day.
To that end, a lot of pundits thought that the Rams move to L.A. and subsequently the Chargers as well would be gimmicky and it wouldn't be sustainable, but you're saying that no, post Super Bowl, the vibes are still great, especially on the Rams side, and Inglewood and the surrounding areas really embrace them again?
Let me just tell you, I grew up in South Central LA. I mean, there's like, I went back because my family's still there, so I went back probably about a month ago. I mean, there's just like coffee shops, there's businesses, there's restaurants, there's just an energy that is just there in LA that, you can only explain it by the city choosing to allow the Rams and them to set up a stadium there, and it's completely changing the area. It's a completely different vibe, man. I mean, if you ever saw the movie Boys in the Hood, that's how I grew up, and it's not that way today.
Now, were you more Trey? Were you more Trey or Doughboy, or were you would have been Ricky, right?
Well, I was probably more Ricky. I was.
Don't stop and scratch the lottery tickets, Larry. Don't stop
right.
and use the restroom, right?
That's right.
That's right. Okay, let's get to this. Larry Triplet, our guest, when you were, and I don't mean to go too deeply Freudian here, but I will. I think for a lot of us in Indianapolis, myself, I mean, a white kid growing up in the suburbs of Indianapolis, I've always felt like NWA, a lot of the rap music that came out in our era, and the movie Boys in the Hood in general, I always felt like it kind of bridged some gaps, Larry. By no means could I understand what it meant to grow up in your environment, but it at least introduced me to the fact that not everybody grew up in mine, if that makes sense. And when you came to Indianapolis, Indianapolis was obviously not Los Angeles. Did you feel immediately here a hospitable understanding from people, or was it a culture shock to come to Indianapolis?
A combination of both. And honestly, I always tell this story about moving in Indy. Number one, for the first, few months of just being there, my cheeks actually started to hurt because everybody's walking around smiling at you. And so when it first happened, I didn't know how to respond to it. So it was kind of weird, but there's just a different vibe there, man. I also tell this story, like when me and my wife was first moved into our house, we got a knock on the door, and it was a lady out there with a little red wagon welcoming us to the neighborhood. And I was just like, dude, I just couldn't even believe I was in a place that like still did this. And so what I have found is growing up in LA, I always lived under this like tension of stress and like, cause you got to always watch your back. You're always nervous and, kind of always looking over your shoulders. And then when I came to Indianapolis, dude, I was able to actually breathe and just kind of live life. And so, that's what I'm seeking for my kids today. We live in a neighborhood that's, relatively safe, and they don't have to deal with that stress that I grew up with of always trying to be looking over your shoulder.
By the way, what do you do like day to day now? I mean, I don't know. Does one just simply live off the NFL, or do you have something that keeps you busy from a day to day?
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you right now, I'm geared to be active and out. So I couldn't just sit at home, man. So I own a hotel, between me and my father, we own a hotel in Arizona, and I was managing that for quite a while. But a buddy of mine, he actually asked me to come help him with his construction company. And so now I'm a superintendent for a construction company here in Oakland, and we do big commercial buildings. And man, I love construction.
Do you wear a hard hat? Do you wear a hard hat?
I do wear a hard hat.
Okay.
I do wear a hard hat. Yeah, but I don't do a lot of the physical work. I'm a superintendent. But I'm at least outside. I'm at least active. And the thing about construction is very similar to football. I mean, as far as just with the camaraderie, it's the guys, you kind of razz on each other. It's just, man, I love construction. I wish I would have got into it earlier. What
do you remember most about your time in Indianapolis? And, I remember, Larry, when you were here, Larry Triplet is our guest, the defensive lineman for the Colts. You did have some injuries, I think, early in your career here. But in terms of just players and teammates and the experiences that you guys had in the construction area of the Indianapolis Colts, what most do you remember?
We briefly lost him, Jake.
Oh, we did?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we'll get him back here in just a second.
Eddie's hot on the scene.
Eddie is. You know what? I wonder if actually, do you think he knocked over a tower? That'd be ironic if he knocked over a tower during his construction work, right?
It would be.
I mean, right in the middle of it, he's out there. Maybe he's out on the crew, right on the little helmet, knocked the phone out. Yep. I mean, who knows what it might be. But we've got him back. Okay, so Larry, what I was asking was, what do you recall just in terms of your time as a Colt and the construction of that roster? I think you were hurt early in your career, Larry Triplet, as a defensive lineman here, but players, coaches, whatever else, what do you most think of about your time as a Colt?
Oh, man, I mean, that's kind of a open question there. There's lots of things I think about, but just how really the way the organization ran, and because the Colts was my first organization that I went into, I didn't really understand and appreciate it as well. But man, when I was in Indy, we had Bill Polian had a thing where and Coach Dungy as well, a thing of one voice. And so from ownership to general manager to coaching, we all heard one voice. And what I mean by that is, like, we were all on the same page. It wasn't a whole lot of different people talking. And that really makes an organization, it gives the tools necessary for an organization to be successful. And what I learned when I went to other teams, that just wasn't necessarily the case. And so that was a huge impact on me. And just the structure that we had in Indy, just a great group of guys. We didn't have a lot of knuckleheads on our team. We had guys that did knucklehead things, but we didn't have a lot of just bad people. And so that's what I remember most about my time there.
Who was the locker room guy that kept things light? Who's the guy that people would be surprised to know that, like, when things were tense, when there was somebody that needed to just create a levity and lighten things up, he was the guy that did it?
Well, Edgerrin was always funny because you never knew what Edge was going to do. But we kind of just had a lot of guys like that. Just, and Peyton is ways – well, you guys are seeing it now because of all the commercials and stuff he does. But Peyton has always been that way. Peyton was always funny. He's a jokester. I can't think of a whole bunch of people off the top of my head. Oh, we had a guy, James Canada. He was great. I played with him for a year. He was super funny. We had a lot of people like that. We had just a great group of guys on our team. I mean, yeah.
By the way, Jimmy, you know what kind of humor Canada has, don't you?
Give me that.
Dry.
Nice.
Okay. Larry, I'm curious of this. When I was, and I want to get to this year's Colts, and I want to talk Indiana, Washington with you as well, but Larry Triplet, our guest, I'm curious of this. When I was covering the Colts, I'll be honest with you, I think I took for granted each and every week, because I didn't know any different, how good you guys were. And notably, I think I took for granted, and I'll admit it, that I didn't realize the greatness. I knew Peyton Manning was a great player, but it wasn't until after the fact that I could look back and go, this guy was a generational level quarterback. When you are a teammate and you are seeing it in practice, were you able to grasp in the moment just how special Peyton Manning was?
No, not only just him. I mean, but just, like I said, Edgerrin, Marv, Reggie Wayne. We had so many guys. Jeff Saturday, there's so many guys on that team, and I'm sure I'm forgetting people, so forgive me. But that they were great, but because of the time, they were just, that was just my teammate, right? And so, we actually joked about this a few weeks ago. It's just like, man, I wish I can you wish you could know what the end was going to be, so while you're in it, you would do more, but then would you really do more? Because you can only do what you could do, right? So, no.
Larry, I want to rewind to the 2005 season. I believe it was against the Titans when this occurred, but you have a fumble recovery for a touchdown, I believe, against Tennessee. If I'm right on all those details, walk me back through that moment, and do you still have that football from that touchdown?
Yes, I do still have that football. And that reminds me, another great guy who at the time, playing with them, you don't understand how great he is, but Dwight Freeney. So Dwight Freeney causes a fumble. He strips the quarterback, and I grabbed it out the air, and man, I just tried to get to that end zone as fast as I could. It was just a great moment, and that was kind of just what our team was. It was just, we were fast. That was a really great year too. I thought for sure we was going to win the Super Bowl that year, but they ended up winning it the next year after that.
Do you still wake up in a cold sweat thinking that Nick Harper actually got away from Ben Roethlisberger?
You know what I think about? I think more about the miss of the kick, because I'm sure, and you can speak to other guys on the team, I just kind of assumed that kick was going to go in.
Larry, it's interesting. We had Mike Vanderjagt on as part of this series, right? And
yeah,
Mike Vanderjagt, I couldn't believe it. Vanderjagt came on here and said, you know what, I had completely lost my form, and I had no idea when I was lining up what was going to happen because I had completely forgotten how to kick. And that stunned me because he played it off well because he'd had a good year, and he was, just such a confident guy on the outside.
Yeah.
I found it fascinating to know. So you guys as teammates didn't necessarily know of that internal struggle, right?
No, and honestly, and I bring up the kid, not necessarily blaming him for that, because but no, Vanderjagt was just that good. He was, it was almost automatic, and so honestly, we were preparing for the next things, and then when it went, I think it was wide right, it was very shocking.
Larry, I have mentioned this before when we look at players right now. Anthony Richardson, obviously. Larry Triplet is our guest, who was the second-round pick when he joined the Colts. And I say this a lot, and I want you as somebody who experienced it to tell me if it's inaccurate. I think sometimes players fall victim to how and where they were acquired. When I look at Liatu Latu, who I think has a lot of promise as the Colts' first-round pick this year, when I look at Anthony Richardson, who was obviously a franchise quarterback based on where he was drafted, I think sometimes guys get into situations where there's expectation that they're going to be off the charts right away because of where and how they were acquired, and that maybe simply signing as a free agent elsewhere gives them a second lease where that pressure is then off of them, and that pressure is half of the battle as a rookie along with everything else that goes into it. Is that fair based on what you experienced?
I think there's some of that. There's definitely some of that managing expectation. That is definitely a big part of being in the NFL. But honestly, too, it's about being coached and being in a system that fits your personality and your abilities. Because, honestly, a person can be able to handle the expectations, but if they're not in a situation that can make them successful or put them in a position to make them successful, it doesn't even matter, really.
In terms of this year's team, how much have you seen of Anthony Richardson, and what are your impressions?
Oh, man, I haven't seen a lot, obviously, but the games that I've seen, my impression of him, that dude is an incredible athlete, man. He can throw the ball I wish I had his athletic ability. So yeah, I'm really pulling for him, and I think as he gets more experience and gets settled down, and they get a system that just fits and works for him, and he gets more comfortable in it, I anticipate seeing greatness from him. What
things as a defensive player, when you were going against young quarterbacks, what things did you look for that were telltales for you that quarterback was susceptible? Was it their eyes or their feet?
Both. I can think about a quarterback, a few actually, that when they're looking around, you can tell. Well, it's an aura of confidence. I don't know if you've seen this. I'm sure you have. When you can look at somebody, you can tell when they're confident and secure in what they're doing and what they're about to do, as opposed to you can see the little fear of insecurity. And I'm going to tell you one person who was fantastic at eating that up, Dwight Freeney. Man, he knew when a quarterback was nervous, and it's almost like he would just go to a different – man, you talking about killer instinct. Dwight, man, when he saw a quarterback was nervous, he was coming to get him.
Washington has no chance tomorrow, correct?
Hey, football, you never know. You never know what's going to happen in a game. IU, I know you guys didn't think IU was going to be as good as they are today.
Oh, no, we knew it. Absolutely. Larry, are you kidding me?
Oh, my God.
No, I came on the show in August as somebody that went to IU, and it only took me 32 years to graduate from there. And I was like, look, these guys this year, it's playoffs or bust, baby. Alabama, Penn, those guys, get them out of the way. Indiana, all the way. I was hooked in. I was bought in, baby.
Oh, man.
I'm exaggerating a little bit. They are pretty good.
Hey, let me tell
you, they're pretty good, though.
They are very good. They're very good. But, their quarterback is hurt, though, right? So, we got to see what the backup can do.
Well, the backup, he's got a lot of experience. It's Trace Jackson Davis that plays for your Warriors. It's his little brother who's the quarterback, and he's a different kind of quarterback, though, right? So, and then let me ask you that. You'd be a good person to ask this. How much does it change a team where you might have a quarterback that is of good experience but plays a totally different style? How hard is that to make that adjustment from one week to the next?
It is difficult because especially in college football, you can have a quarterback, especially if he's run and he's athletic, can totally dominate a game and take over a game and can win one game. Now, to do that throughout a whole season can be difficult, but to win one game, you have an athletic quarterback, man, and they make the plays that need to happen. But then also, too, you get a new quarterback who's not really confident with the offense, not know what he's doing, and all of a sudden you throw a couple picks, and all it takes is a turnover. That's what Tony used to say. We just got to get a turnover, get the turnover. So that can change the game as well.
Now, Larry, I'm looking here. Larry Triplet, you went to Westchester High School. Is that correct?
That is right.
Okay, now is that in, and I hate to say this stereotypically, when people here think of South Central Los Angeles, they think of Compton just because of the pop cultural aspect of it. Is that in that general vicinity?
No. So Westchester is closer to LAX Airport. LA is really big, and Compton is not South Central. So just so you know that too. It's not close. So
Compton is obviously further south, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So here's a list of people I'm looking at Wikipedia, which never lies. This is a list of famous people that went to your high school, and I want to know if you've ever met them. You ready?
Okay.
Trevor Ariza.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Phil Hartman, the late great Phil Hartman, comedian.
No.
Amir Johnson.
No.
This is the most important one. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, how about this one? You never would have met her. Patricia Karenwinkle, one of the Manson family killers. You obviously never met her. She's behind bars.
No.
She's not in the Hall of Fame there at school, right?
No. Okay. I didn't even know she went there. No.
Ken Norton Jr.
I have, yes.
Okay. This is the most important one, though. Kiana Chase.
No.
What year did you graduate?
97.
She was the class of 99, Playboy Playmate.
What? And I didn't know her?
I'm just telling you. Kiana Chase is an American model and a Playboy Playmate of the Month in July of 2005. You were busy at that time, I realize.
Man.
Yeah, she tried out for the Playboy Scouts during the 50th anniversary Playmate hunt. Mm-hmm. She was born in 81.
What was I doing in high school?
I'm just telling you.
I was about my studies in high school. See, that's what I'm saying. I was about my studies. I went to University of Washington.
Here, actually, it says right here. Yeah. Kiana's senior year yearbook, it says her famous quote in her senior year yearbook was, "Can't believe my sophomore year when that kid Larry wouldn't smile at me. Serves him right when he goes to Indy and his cheeks get sore." Okay. Fair enough. Larry, lastly, I wanted to bring this up. We're up against it, but I did want to bring this up. I did not know this about you, but I wanted to bring it up because I thought it was very cool. Firefly is an organization in Indianapolis that was formerly known as the Indianapolis Children's Bureau. It is a critically important thing in Indianapolis because it takes children that, in the middle of the night are pulled out of domestic violence situations or terrible situations, and it gives them a place to live and to be around other kids and to still be able to go to school. And it takes them in emergency situations, shelters them in emergency situations. I did not realize that your wife was an active member of that organization and employed by them during your time in Indianapolis and that you did work for them. I thought it was very cool, but I wanted you to just have the opportunity to tell people about the great work that they do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the reasons why I miss Indiana. We had a great time there. We were part of great organizations. Like you said, the time we were there, it was called Children's Bureau. My wife, she was adopted, and so she worked in social work, got her MSW, and she was part of Children's Bureau there. And we used to have little fundraisers that she would be in charge of. And the community aspect of Indianapolis, you feel as if you're part of something there. And I feel like Children's Bureau did a great job of being a vessel that the community could use to help others in the community. And so, yeah, I loved it there. It was great.
Would you ever move back?
I would, but all my family's out here, and so I got family I got to take care of. So unfortunately, unless they all move out there, we're gonna be here in California.
All right, understandable. The California weather's perfect, no question about it. Larry, best of luck tomorrow in watching your Huskies become like the 8th victim of Indiana to lose by double digits as Indiana's run to the inevitable national championship game continues. And I certainly appreciate the time as always. And next time you come into Indianapolis, because I know you come back for games occasionally when they do Ring of Honors and whatnot, pop in studio and we'll hang out with you.
I would love to, man. And I'm so happy you said that about my dogs, because then you'll be able to eat those words come Saturday night.
All right. We'll see. Your buddy,
right.
game day is going to be there, the whole deal. So we'll see what happens. Larry, I appreciate it, man.
That's
Have a good weekend, all right?
All right, you too.
All right, Larry Triplet, former Colt on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line. Yeah, Kiana Chase here. Now, if you're going to Google her, make sure that you're not at work. It's on the Wikipedia. It just says that she went there.
Did you make that mistake? Is that what's happening? Are people going to come in here now?
No, when I went on the Wikipedia, Phil Hartman's a pretty big one.
Yeah.
But then I see, wait a minute, there's a long list of people from his high school. But the fact that there's a Playboy Playmate, I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. You know, I'm telling you, I think Indiana is going to take care of business tomorrow. Indiana's going to take care of business. All right, Pacers are also in action. Home opener coming up on Sunday, but they got one between now and then. We'll discuss that next. Pacers in action tonight, taking on the New York Knicks in the Garden. They are here for their home opener on Sunday, taking on the 76ers of Philadelphia. No Joel Embiid, no Paul George, and that means a programming note to let all of you know about the Colts game in its entirety from the pregame to the postgame. So from 10 a.m. until 7 on Sunday, you will be able to hear anything relating to the Colts broadcast on our sister station, 97.1 FM. That is Hank FM. The Colts game will, the pregame and game itself, be heard here on The Fan until 3 o'clock, at which point the Pacers broadcast will begin. So from 10 until 3, right here on The Fan on Sunday, in its entirety, all the way through 7 o'clock on our sister station, 97.1 Hank FM, The Fan. As for the Pacers taking on the Knicks, the one thing that we now know that we talked about and speculated yesterday, I realize all of you have heard the news by now, but the worst fears came true in the fact that when James Wiseman, it did not look to be, oftentimes when people have an Achilles injury, they go to the ground, they grab the back of the ankle, you can kind of see a pop. They usually describe it as it felt like somebody came up and snapped them or bit them, and they just simply have no mobility. He did kind of limp off the court. They did an MRI in New York and determined that, yes, in fact, he has suffered an Achilles tear. And so the severity of that and the length of time, the process by which he recovers from that, still to be determined. Jimmy, it would be disingenuous to say that this is a guy that we thought was going to be, a mainline starter for the Pacers, but certainly looked like somebody that at the very least was an intriguing depth piece worth exploring, and for that fact, it's disappointing, not just for him, but for the Pacers too.
Yeah, I mean, you would have hoped. Let's focus on him for a second. This is a former number 2 overall pick whose career to this point has been defined by injuries and not finding the right home, and you thought that maybe with bringing him into Indiana as a depth piece, he'd finally be able to find his lane in the NBA, and who's to say he wouldn't have? I mean, by all reports, he was going to fit in very nicely as a guy that could give you anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes a night if called upon. He's a depth piece behind Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam, and now he's gone for the year. From his standpoint, he's still technically with a club option under team control next season. You would hope if the Pacers really value him the same way they signed him, that maybe that's a stick around one more season and see through rehab if he's able to be a valuable contributor in 25-26. But now you look around the Pacers roster with how you replace what he was doing, or what he was going to do this year, I should say, and you're asking more from the likes of a Jarris Walker or an Obi Toppin or a Enrique Freeman or an Isaiah Jackson. And the Walker part of that is most interesting to me because on the one hand, you could just take the minutes and say, okay, you give them to Isaiah Jackson, spread them that way, mix between Obi Toppin a little bit, and then you still do the small forward thing with Jarris Walker, assuming there is a role, which I know you're waiting for that still, Jake, we all are, but assuming there is a expanded role for Jarris Walker this season, is he now no longer written in ink as a small forward for this team? Are you looking at utilizing him as a hybrid forward that's doing both now?
At this point, this is what I'd like from Jarris Walker. And I say at this point, I mean, that's really unfair. He's very young. I get all that. But it's kind of like Anthony Richardson. At some point, you got to take off the kid gloves, right? And you got to say, let's go. And I'm okay with this. At no fault of his, because of just the fact that he's coming into a situation with a really good roster. Maybe Jarris Walker's role is that he simply grows into being their Swiss Army knife. A guy kind of like Nesmith, or for that matter, Nembhard, different positions, I realize, but a guy that is a hybrid that can play depending on what the situation is. And you put him in different situations, different places, just depending on what is needed in that moment. And I would be okay with that, right? If that's what is needed, where instead of being their sixth man at the coming off the bench scorer at the small forward position, or instead of being the for certain power forward or backup power forward guy, maybe he's a little of both. Maybe he plays 12 minutes in one position one night and 18 minutes in the next position the next night, and you move him around in that regard.
With that specific position group, though, you are thinner now than you were before from a depth standpoint. than you even were a year ago, because at least you still had Jalen Smith as a body. I'm not saying Walker's the guy to do that. I know Eddie's a big fan of Enrique Freeman. Maybe he winds up getting more minutes because of this, but you're going to need to find a way to have confidence in your backline depth with him going down now, because I think the Pacers truly did envision him as being in that same minutes distribution as Jalen Smith was a year ago, which is, hey, your number's called. We're going to need you for 5, 10, 15 minutes a night like they did Smith, like they do Isaiah Jackson. So they're going to have to get creative to some extent to alleviate the pressure and the luxury of the depth they had at that position group a year ago.
You know, a year ago, if you look, for example, at Jarris Walker and Ben Shepherd, okay? Walker was taken higher. Walker was the bigger name coming in. Shepherd was, oh, you know what? They got another late first-round pick, and they took this guy that apparently is a pretty good shooter, and we'll see how that translates, right? Situationally, Ben Shepherd found himself on the floor before Jarris Walker because of the situation, and there was attrition above him. So now all of a sudden he had to play. And then by the end of the year, you're like, oh, okay, this is a nice piece that has experience because he had to play because there was situation where people went down.
Yeah.
And that accelerated the timeline for Ben Shepherd. And he grew up faster. Now, he's also an older player in general. I realize that. For the case of Enrique Freeman, it is entirely possible that we're going to say he got thrown to the Wolves too early, and maybe that means there are going to be some inconsistencies if he has to give them minutes here in the first quarter of the season, but it's only going to help him in the long run. Rick Smits went through that. Nobody thought Smits as a rookie was going to play, but Steve Stepanovich got hurt, and boom, now he's in there, and that paid dividends for him. We saw it a year ago with Ben Shepherd. It paid dividends for him. Maybe that's what happens here with Enrique Freeman. Some growing pains, right?
Maybe it happens with Walker.
Right, and maybe it happens with Walker because you got to take the training wheels off at some point and go, you know what, just go. Just go. You're going to fall down. You're going to scrape your knee. Just get up and come back, right?
Yeah.
All right, in terms of those that have scraped their knee and come back, we're talking about the Colts injury list. We'll give you the latest on how it shapes up for the Texans next. So in terms of some of the wheels that are still turning for the Colts out at practice today, we know this. We mentioned it earlier. Jonathan Taylor and DeForest Buckner are both practicing. Those are key figures for the Colts taking on the Houston Texans come Sunday. Kevin Bowen going to join us about 15 minutes from now. We'll find out who his son picked in the game itself. But the one thing that I hope is this. It's obviously a big game. It's a big moment. And, you know, the Texans are a team that at times have had seasons where you thought, okay, they've established themselves, they've arrived, and then, you know, they've gone out in the postseason and fairly quickly found their way right back out again. And you're like, okay, well, they're going to have to come back and, you know, take another step. And we have seen players as rookies that I think of in Houston was like their coming out party. Reggie Wayne being one of them, who's now obviously working with Josh Downs, who is practicing today, by the way. And I think is a really important piece for the Colts. But Anthony Richardson, I'm just going to declare this right now in late October of 2024. Anthony Richardson, since he has been drafted here and acquired, has done everything the right way, I think. He seemingly, you know, is a good person. He's been good in the community. None of those things help you win football games. None of them, right? I mean, it was people want a quarterback that's going to go out there and win you games. That's the I know people talk about how they want, you know, oh, it's great. It's an added bonus if it's a Boy Scout, but you got to win games. And in terms of the football aspect, I think he's also done what's been asked. He's practiced. He's come back from injury. He's tried to work on the things that they want him to work on. So in no way, shape, or form do I have any bone to pick with Anthony Richardson. But I do have a bone to pick with the way, at this point, the Colts have handled him. And I think it's time to make this declaration. Shane Steichen was asked after the Miami game, I believe, just
yes,
in terms of the offense itself and at times their inability to get things going with Anthony Richardson at quarterback. I'm kind of paraphrasing what the question was. But here's what Shane Steichen had to say about the offense and Anthony Richardson last week.
I got to do better. I got to put him in better positions. I mean, you go back, I'm going to watch the tape, but there wasn't a lot of stuff open, to be honest, when I was out there watching it. So that's on me. I got to be better.
I can appreciate I'm standing up for my guys. But with all players, eventually the gloves have to come off. Andrew Luck, since the Colts have come from Baltimore, there have been three franchise quarterbacks, okay? Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck being the most recent two, and both of them were challenged at some point. I remember, people forget this. People forget the famous playoffs rant from Jim Mora. The first half of that, he comes out and says, and I can tell you because I had to edit that clip 247,000 times and send it to every television station in America because I worked at Channel 6 at the time. He comes out and the first thing he says, well, I'll tell you this much. Don't blame that game on the defense, okay? I don't care who you play. We turned the ball over 4 times. 3 of them for touchdowns. What's that, 4 for touchdowns? I don't care who you play. A junior college team, a college team, much less an NFL team, you ain't going to beat anybody I just talked about with those stupid-ass plays. Costly picks. And he threw Peyton Manning right under the bus. Called him out. Took the gloves off. Let's go. Look, kid, you've been here 3 years now. Let's go. It's time to get going. Manning didn't need that. We know that. And probably, you know, and Mora, who I love. I love everything about Jim Mora. And I've interviewed Jim Mora since then where he and Peyton Manning have a very warm relationship. And I think that's partially probably why. Because Manning appreciated he was pushed. Andrew Luck. Unbelievable talent, unbelievable player. Had right out of the box, man. That guy was basically push and play. But what did the Colts do? They started challenging him of, look, you've got to start. We're going to bring in players from the Indianapolis Indians. You've got to learn how to slide. And Richardson did do that well against Miami, by the way. But you've got to take care of your body. And when Luck started getting injured and there was a lot of pushback about the offensive line, Andrew Luck was the one, or the Colts were the one that were like, part of that's on Andrew Luck. They took the kid gloves off, and they're like, Andrew, part of that's on you. And by the way, interesting comments I saw the other day from Trent Richardson, who did a podcast talking about his time as a Colt, and he said, look, I was playing behind an offensive line that Andrew Luck was getting killed. We had a center that was like 6 foot, 240, and he's like, and I'm watching Andrew just get absolutely killed, and they're coming after me. And Richardson was very blunt about the things that Andrew Luck had to go through. But the Colts eventually were not afraid to also make it known that some of the things that were challenges were brought on for Andrew Luck by Andrew Luck. With Anthony Richardson, the time is now. He's been here long enough now. You've shown him what he needs to do. You've let him go out and do the things that he needs to learn from. Eventually, he's got to have an accountability on his own as well. I'm not saying he's cost them games, but when he doesn't play well, and when he's under 500, and when they're averaging 5 yards per reception, and they're not getting through their progressions, or they're not opening up their passing game because they're not able to complete bubble screens or a 4-yard out or whatever it might be, or they're sailing over the head on 4th and 8, 3rd and 8, those kinds of things. Eventually, you've got to say, you know what? We need better quarterback play. We need to be more. We need to be sharper. We need to be more focused. And I say it like with tough love, not in a what are we doing here kind of way, but in a we need to push this guy kind of way. But they're continuing to basically mask the areas where he's fallen short by putting the onus on everybody but Anthony Richardson. It's big boy football, right? And only the Colts know exactly psychologically how he's going to respond to certain things, so maybe there's something to that. But if that's the case, then you shouldn't be playing quarterback in the National Football League. It's a very, very difficult position. But I just think that the time is now where, out of support for Anthony Richardson, out of belief in Anthony Richardson, it's time to take off the training wheels and say, there's a big hill in front of you, kid, and you're going to get scraped up. It's not going to be fun, but we're just going to push you down this hill, and if you fall off, you're going to have to get right back on that bike, come right back up the top of the hill, and go right back down it. And that's the only way that you're going to see progression, because if you continue to just make excuses and put some sort of a bubble around it, I just don't feel like it's going to get there. I just feel like it's not going to get there. Kevin Bowen joins us and does so next. Kevin Bowen just called me, by the way. Texans coming up Sunday down in Houston. Big one for both. As a matter of fact, I'm going to lead off with the most elementary question of all time for Kevin Bowen, who, of course, is on the wake-up call with KB and Andy from 7 until 10 on this radio station. He joins us now on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Gas line. Kevin, bigger game for the Colts or for the Texans?
I would probably say the Colts, just given the divisional drought is a decade long, and Houston won it last year. But certainly if you look at Houston's schedule, they still have a lot of big games. And the Colts have a tough schedule upcoming, but Houston still has, I believe, Detroit, Kansas City, Baltimore, Miami with Tua. I think there's another game in there that I'm forgetting about that they still have. So, but they also have a game up lead on the Colts right now, and they won the first game. So, yeah, I mean, it is the Colts, I think, if you were going to make me pick. But, D'Amico Ryans is certainly singing the tune of, if you can't get ready for this game, why show up, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a big game undoubtedly between both of these teams, but I would say if you make me pick, it's certainly the Colts.
Well, it's kind of hard to think that the division could be wrapped up this early. I mean, it's almost irresponsible to say that because we're basically not even at the halfway point yet. But the reality is, Kevin, that if Houston gets this game, numerically speaking, it makes things very difficult for Indianapolis, right?
Yeah, I mean, you need gobs of help. I mean, you'd be 2 games back and then obviously have lost the head-to-head tiebreaker. So, yeah, and if you do win, technically Houston would still have the divisional lead right now just based off of divisional record. That Jacksonville loss, I think, will come back to haunt the Colts big time. But record-wise, they'd be tied. They both would be 5-3. So it's a monumental game for Week 8. You can't stress it enough. And if you want a realistic shot at having a chance to end that decade-long division title drought, you would be well served to win this one. If you don't, wild card watch takes precedence.
Kevin, we were playing a clip from Shane Steichen last segment in regards to the struggles offensively at times against Miami, and Shane Steichen taking the blame for wide receivers not getting open, separation not being there, and to some extent perhaps shielding Anthony Richardson and, doing what any head coach would do in that situation. As you look back at the tape there, do you agree with Steichen's sentiment that it was largely his fault in regards to guys not getting opened? And from a development standpoint of Anthony Richardson, to Jake's point about taking the kid gloves off, how do you do that within this offense? Is it increasing his pass attempts per game? Is it trying to get his confidence going early? I've yet to feel that signature game from him. There's been highlight moments, but that signature game in this de facto rookie season for Anthony Richardson has not arrived for me. So is it Steichen's fault based on those comments against Miami? And where do you unlock Richardson or build confidence for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was some definite truth to, I believe, in the post-game press conference in the first 6 questions, we got 9. I've got to be better from Shane Steichen. And obviously part of that is his MO. But, I mean, I think Miami had 18 pressures in the game and no sacks. I mean, some of that is just pre-snap identification that can be on the quarterback, but also Miami giving, looks to Indy that they didn't expect. And then I do think from a schematic standpoint, they did a great job taking away Josh Downs in some critical moments. So, I would probably put that on there. I mean, if you want to look at it, Richardson obviously had some flat-out misses, and I think he could do a better job of throwing with anticipation. I think there are some NFL open moments that he is waiting for college open to happen, and I just don't think you can do that. But I didn't think he was necessarily as erratic as he was against Chicago or Green Bay, for example, which very low bars. I get it, but that's where I think some of Steichen's comments come into play here. As far as how do you help him, whatever, ease into a game, et cetera, et cetera. I'd probably like to see a little bit more run-pass option stuff. I think that if you look at some of the numbers, he's actually been pretty good as a thrower with those types of plays compared to the other stuff. Again, running him, I mean, sure, I think it's productive, but does that really help him as a thrower? I don't necessarily think it does. I don't know, maybe get into more third and manageable situations. Granted, when Richardson has been in third and shorts and third and mediums, he's been horrible. compared to third and long. So I'd say specifically to answer that part of the question, I would say just more RPO stuff.
Kevin, it feels to me, simplistic as this may sound, like the real catch-22 for the Colts when it comes to Anthony Richardson is that doing what he does best is actually providing almost too much of a safety net away from what it is that he needs to improve upon. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like, I love when they run the ball with him and they design run plays for him, but each time you do that, it's like, look, eventually you're going to have to figure out how to get a passing game going here. And I get that the first one works, and so why go away from that, except for that eventually you're going to need the second. There's part of me that's like, just rip off the Band-Aid and just start going with 30 pass plays per game until it starts working. Too elementary to say it that way?
Well, I think that's just the awkward dilemma that the franchise is in as a whole. Are you trying to win now, or are you trying to develop your own quarterback? That's the difficult nature, and I think exiting the game on Sunday, it's like, wow, Anthony Richardson, tied his career high in rushing yards. The Colts just ran for their most yards all season, and Jonathan Taylor didn't play. And I kind of was like, I don't really care, because sure, Richardson can do that and can do it quite well, but I knew that in April 2023. What we didn't know in April 2023 is, could he pass? Could he be accurate at the NFL level? Could he develop as a thrower? And here we are, 18 months later, and those questions, I would argue, have only grown. I would say he's regressed, frankly, in the areas that we had the biggest questions on him exiting Florida. So, yeah, to your point, if you purely were trying to develop them, you would throw it and drop back past it like it was the preseason, which we saw him do. If you were trying to solely win the football game, you'd run them like Army and Navy run their quarterbacks. So I think that is a very, very difficult, awkward state of the Colts franchise. And some people look at, hey, they've won 4 or 5, they should be celebrated. And others would say, well, how's Anthony Richardson looked in those 5 games? And he hasn't looked very good. So, that's, again, all of this just comes into a very weird time, I think, to look at the Colts as a franchise, or, maybe even be a Colts fan.
Do they run any risk, Kevin, or at what point do you enter into the risk? And I understand it. You understand it. Andy understands it. John understands it. Jimmy understands it. The fans understand it. We understand that you have to develop Anthony Richardson, who deserves to be developed. I get all that. But if it comes at the point of, or at the cost of, doing what's going to win you games over the course of the season, does that eventually lose the locker room? Is there any risk of that?
Yeah, there might be some of it. I do think guys, if you go back to their comments at training camp when we talked to them, or you guys talked to them in shows, I would venture to guess several interviews you guys did, certainly we did, guys said, boy, it feels great to have the same quarterback for a second straight season, or, it feels great to have a young quarterback that, we can grow with. A lot of these guys have lived with the, Minshew, Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz revolving door. Some of them even go back to Philip Rivers. Some of them even go back to Jacoby Brissett. So I think they get it. But sure, I'm sure there's also an element that these guys can live in a week-to-week cycle at times and think, gosh, it's frustrating to have to be patient and have to, live with this development process when, in an ideal world, you wouldn't have to as well. So, yeah, I don't know if losing the locker room is – that's a big, big phrase. I understand the question. I don't think guys are fed up with it, but in an ideal world, you wouldn't have this awkward nature. You'd have, help, right, what Houston is dealing with, having, C.J. Stroud be very accomplished very early in his career and not feel like you are in this patient developmental growth mode at the most important position on the team.
Kevin Bowen is our guest. He joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. You hear him on the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy, 7 to 10 a.m. on these very airwaves. Kevin, still with Richardson, and there's a lot of different ways to answer this question, but as I mentioned, Jake brought up the fact of taking the training wheels off and opening things up for him. I look at other quarterbacks around the league, and fair or not, C.J. Stroud is going to be a quarterback that he is compared to every time they play each other. In fact, probably on a weekly basis because they're in the same draft class. And I look at pass attempts, and prior to last week, you're looking at north of 30 pass attempts a game for C.J. Stroud. The elite level, guys like Josh Allen, it's foreign territory to see them have a game where they're under 20, 25 pass attempts because that offense is built around that specific gunslinging quarterback, pocket passing quarterback, just competency at that position to where they trust them. With Anthony Richardson, and I've argued this to some extent since the days of training camp, where just I want to see him throw. You mentioned it. We know he can run. I want to see him throw. I'm fine with him dropping back as many times they need to a game. Is the reason they're not doing that, where he's still having games where it's 15, maybe 20 pass attempts, is that because of drive killers, because he can't hit the easy stuff, and so game script changes what they have to do? Or is that a manner of them not trusting him and realizing that that's maybe not the best place to develop him, dropping back 25, 35 times a game?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably, I guess, a little bit of both. I mean, he's not good enough, frankly, as a thrower to sustain drives. I mean, when you aren't completing over 50% of your passes, you aren't going to be able to have as many offensive plays. The Colts probably are one of the, I don't know for sure, I'm just guessing, but I would assume they're probably one of the least offensive play teams in the league this season, just in the ability to sustain drives at a high level. I mean, also, you aren't going to ignore arguably your best player, and I know we're going back to September now, but Jonathan Taylor, of course, is a big part of, those carries early on in the season. So I do think that is a little bit of an element. And
they're 23rd in passes per game, just for reference, for what that's worth.
Okay, yeah. And I would assume general plays per game, they're probably even lower than that. But I certainly hear where, I guess, I feel like you and Jake are kind of on a similar page here, and I understand it. But, there is an element of, you can't totally video game it. You can't totally just be like, hey, man, we're going to drop you back 40 times and adapt or die. And this is how it's going to be.
But is there middle ground? I'm sorry to cut across you, Kev, but I'm with you. I'm not saying you totally throw them to the wolves and it's like I'm playing Madden, but when I see win or lose, when I see Anthony Richardson go 7 of 15 or 10 of 24 or 9 of 19, win or lose, I don't necessarily view that as a good day for him. Growth-wise or otherwise, I don't. Maybe I'm being too short-sighted, but is there a middle ground to where not as extreme 35, 40 times a game, but not as dismal as 20?
Yeah, I mean, maybe there is a little bit more middle ground. I guess I'm looking at Sunday, for example. I mean, he's 10 of 24. Obviously, he's at fault for not having more pass attempts in that game. Defensively, you gave up, 188 rushing yards, so that contributes to Miami. I think Miami had the more time possession. I could be wrong on that. So, that contributes a little bit more to not having the ability to throw it. I don't know. I'd have to look. I mean, obviously, he ran it a good amount as well. Sermon and Goodson didn't seem like I had an overwhelming amount of carries in that. So, I mean, sure, they could definitely uptick it. But, again, this kind of gets back to what I said earlier. It's this is just the very difficult stage of the 2024 Indianapolis Colts. It's if you're trying to win now, you might not throw it at all. Or the only times you throw it, you just wait till Alec Pierce is 30 yards down the field and chuck it up to him. But at the same time, you want to have balance, and you don't want teams to sit solely on the run, and things like that. And, if Richardson could hit some of those areas, is that all of a sudden make the defense rethink what their game plan is? Because right now, I think, in general, the game plan is, hey, let's keep safeties way back, and then let's just suffocate the line of scrimmage when they do run it, and Josh Downs, and outside of that, we'll leave 5 to 15 yards relatively open in some zones, and we'll see if Richardson, can hit the dartboard. And right now he's proven that he can't really hit the dartboard.
Hey, Kev, Indiana going to beat Washington?
I assume. Jimmy might know this a little better than I. Outside of Oregon, it feels like none of the Western Big Ten teams have won in the Central or Eastern time zone.
Hey,
yeah, you're right on that.
You want to know, Kevin? You want to know, and I realize I just cut you off there. My apologies, but you went into something I think is going to be interesting. Do you want to know what I think is going to be fascinating in 3 to 5 years? Is Oregon, USC, Washington, UCLA. I'm going to be curious to see how much of, even though they're getting a boatload of Big Ten cash, the cost of travel, like Oregon, I heard, to go to Purdue, they had to take 2 different chartered flights because they couldn't get all their equipment and everything on one flight. So they had to do 2 different charters. In addition to that, I'm curious to see if it eventually affects recruiting once players start talking about, especially on the basketball side of things, about the rigors of the travel of every flight being like 4.5 to 5 hours every single time they have an away game. Eventually, our players going to be like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Am I crazy?
Yeah, I know. I don't think you are. I mean, I think probably 18, 19-year-olds are a little naive to just, maybe express that as much as like professional athletes would. But if I'm not mistaken, I think Washington and maybe the noon kickoff had something to do with this. They came in Thursday, so I mean that's an extra day. I mean, Kurt Cignetti has said like when they go to games, he doesn't want to get there until like 8 p.m. the night before the game. Whereas Washington, to adjust, I assume, to the time zone, came in. And then, I mean, you know this from IndyCar, Jake. I mean, those equipment trucks, I mean, that's no joke. I think I looked it up. It was like an over 2,000-mile trip.
Oh, yeah.
From, Seattle to Bloomington. And, again, Iowa beat them handily. They also lost to Rutgers. I mean, I don't think the defending national champion should be having those sorts of results. So, yeah, and to your point, it's probably much more basketball. Like, when I've looked at IU and Purdue's Big Ten schedule, I mean, it stands out like the Wednesday to Saturday trip out west because they pair you up. So you play Oregon and Washington or USC and UCLA. And, I mean, for Indiana and Purdue, when they go out there, that's like a 5-day road trip. I mean, you would never have a 5-day road trip in the old Big Ten. So seemingly Washington, Oregon, UCLA, USC, they're doing that on what? 4 or 5 times throughout the season. I mean, what do you play, 20 conference games? So you play 10 road games? Hey, you're doing that 5. Well, I guess maybe you have a few of your games against fellow West Coast teams, but you're doing that a good amount. So, yeah, I think that's a fair point. Of course, the TV revenue is huge, but, yeah, there might be a little competitive advantage there for.
Well, and the other thing, there's nowhere like Jake and I had this conversation a couple weeks ago, and I didn't think it was crazy by any means, but you're running out of places to go if you're a student that's against that. Okay, you want to go play in the ACC, kind of the same thing's happening.
You're right.
So your option is either to go play at a smaller school or don't play. Like it's going to become the reality of what the beast is. It's adapt or die to some extent.
Yeah, no, that is. I mean, yeah, the ACC. I know it's still weird to think. Yeah, I mean Notre Dame. I think plays Stanford and Cal, for example, and I'm like, oh yeah, those are conference games in the ACC. So. Yeah, and I thought, I mean, yeah, I'm turning this into a much different story, but, like, I thought it was interesting when Jalen Harrelson committed to Notre Dame. He mentioned, like, the ACC developing, NBA-type players. I think I, like, looked at the latest mock draft. Like, outside of those 2 kids from Rutgers, it's, like, tons of ACC talent and very minimal Big Ten talent. Like does that continue to become a narrative? It's like, I think we think in college athletics in today's day and age, it's Big Ten and SEC and everybody else, but it's like, do you get to a point with the Big Ten Conference where the lack of national championships in basketball and seemingly a lack of NBA talent, does that become a little bit more of a thing when college kids are picking what school to go to?
Kevin, a bit of a struggle this week for your son picking a team, right?
Oh yeah. He had pregame jitters. He farted right at the start, and then. Okay. Yeah, and then I'm trying to think and then he was kind of all over the place.
Did he pull out the finesse? Like was that savvy by Max Bowen causing Colts fans to have a brief heart attack? Is that what the play was there, or was that just organic and just happened to happen?
Boy, that's a great question. I'd like to think it's organic. Frankly, as his father, I hope it was organic. I'm thinking, boy, if he's already has the ability to scheme up.
Is he trolling people already?
Yeah, to your point, if he's trolling people, what's he doing on the playground? So, yeah, I was a little rattled. Again, the pregame jitters, it's fine. I mean, hell, I've probably had some moments of that. So, gas was gas, but the whole Duke. I did not see that coming, but he went with the Colts, so we'll see if we can get back on track after the Dolphins let him down.
Notre Dame Navy this weekend, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm sweating thinking about it. I know it's not your older brother's Navy. They do a whole lot more than just the wishbone, but gosh, if you screw up a drive or two against Navy, it's just it's a game. And there's just no good that comes out of it. Notre Dame won't get any respect for the win, and if they lose, they're likely done.
I also worry at some point, I don't know when it's going to happen, but Notre Dame continues to lose key pieces. It's a star corner one week, it's an offensive lineman the next. Like I just worry at some point That combined with the fact I don't trust Riley Leonard, that it's going to come back to bite him. I don't know if it's this weekend or not, but it's there.
Yeah, and they also, when you play Navy and they do all those cut blocks, it's like you could lose some defensive linemen too. So, look, I get the historical, reference in playing Navy, and I do think that's really cool, and I largely enjoy the thought that they do play them annually. But I feel like every time the game comes, I'm like, this is a no-win situation for, how people view it in the college football world. And I don't know, maybe now that Navy and Army are in a conference, it'll be viewed differently. But they're both undefeated. I mean, if Navy was, I'm trying to think of an equivalent opponent, but if Notre Dame was playing, a team not named Navy or Army and they were undefeated, I think the respect level would be a little different than how it's viewed nationally.
Okay.
I don't fully disagree with that.
Listen,
but the two playoff contending teams.
Selfishly speaking, okay, do you have the breaking news sounder, Eddie, by chance? For the first time, maybe in my lifetime, I'm rooting for Notre Dame this weekend.
Really?
I'm all in. Yeah, all in.
No, you were all in against Louisville. You guaranteed that they were going to.
No, I wasn't rooting for them.
Oh, okay. You were just predicting. My fault. Okay.
They were going to win.
Sorry.
I'm rooting for Notre Dame, and here's why.
Yeah.
My
Kevin's
goal in
happiness?
life has always been to go to the Army-Navy football game, but right now tickets are like $950 because they're both undefeated. I need both of these two teams to go south in a big way in the next month and then bring down the ticket prices.
So
let's go Irish.
Pat Forty had a headline that was Notre Dame versus United States of America Part 1. I guess you could throw Jake Query as a defendant on there as well.
Right.
Trying to
let's go.
Get that done.
Go Irish. I'm all in, Kevin.
Where is that game, Jake?
They are playing in Landover, Maryland at FedEx Field.
Got it. And the weird thing, too, is they could play for a conference title, right?
Yep.
The week prior.
Yep.
I mean, they could be playing for a playoff berth.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just why. I think, there's a ton of great stories. Hell, there's one an hour and a half south of here in Bloomington right now. But, I mean, the Navy-Army story is, wild this year. I think it's going to continue to get more attention. Hell, if Navy wins tomorrow, obviously it'll get a ton. But them being a playoff team, and, I saw something the other day of, if the Big 12 champion starts to, if it's a two-loss team and Navy or Army run the table, Navy or Army would be one of the top 4 seeds. They would get a bye.
And doesn't it feel like even with that, people still wouldn't respect it, and they'd be like, yeah, but it's, you know what I mean?
I know, but again, I have such a soft spot for watching Navy and Army play football. I want them, part of me is like, gosh, obviously I want Notre Dame to win. I'm not that crazy.
It's blood on the hands. I understand. I'm right with you.
Yeah. I'd like to see a respectable effort, and I'd love to see one of them in the playoffs.
All right, we'll see what happens. I'll be rooting for. I'll come by the house for a green beer while we're watching Notre Dame on Saturday, and then I'm going to be in Ireland next week, so I'm going to be Irish for the next 10 days. Let's go.
Gosh, is your health good? Should we call Mopman? Everything all right?
Yeah, everything's good. Mopman and I went to Blind Owl on Tuesday night. Yep, we're all good. Good to go.
I'm sure he'll be in town for the Lions game, or he'll be at the Lions game.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. Good recall. All right, Kev, we'll be listening 7 o'clock. You guys will be recapping all of these games that we're talking about. I know on the wake-up call Monday morning we'll be listening. Appreciate it. Have a good weekend.
Awesome. You guys have a great weekend as well.
Kevin Bowen joining us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Gas line. It's a Friday. You know what that means. It is a feel-good Friday brought to you by the great folks at Franciscan Health, and we will do it. Matter of fact, I got a great compliment about that over the course of the week. I'll let you know about that on the other side. Health Feel Good Friday. Mention this to you folks each and every week. It's very important to me. I appreciate that people have acted upon it. Talking about getting a heart scan from Franciscan Health. Franciscan, by the way, the #1 heart program in Indiana for cardiology by health grades. #1 in Indiana for interventional coronary care. Jake, what exactly is interventional coronary care? Well, I'll explain.
What is that, Jake?
Thank you. It's where you're having an issue with your heart and an interventionist has to stand in and intervene. Notably, for example, if you have an angioplasty like I had, so I had a blockage in my heart, a clot, and the interventionist comes in and breaks through that clot with a balloon and then typically leaves a stent, which is a little bridge to keep the artery open. That's the interventional coronary care. #1 in Indiana for interventional coronary care and major cardiac surgery by CareChex. And the heart scan is very simple and it's very affordable. Just $49. You can self-refer. You can pay out of pocket. You get a free heart health risk assessment with every screening. It's not invasive. It does not take long. And it gives you that peace of mind of understanding where your heart health is and is very important. I would like to thank my buddy and longtime show listener, John Ackerman, who on Tuesday, as part of the 4-year mark of my heart attack, I went to Blind Owl, as I told you guys. Thank you. Thanks. Jimmy applauded that, right? I went to Blind Owl, as I told you guys, on Tuesday because that's where my heart attack took place. So
see,
just
clapping after that would be weird.
That's
but
where we
acknowledging
go.
The anniversary is fine, I think.
And when I walked in, John was there and said, hey, he wanted to have a beer to celebrate as well. He himself just came off of knee replacement surgery. He was a basketball star at Montana State, but has been a good friend, loyal listener, came to our night at the Fan Cave a couple of years ago. But one of the things he said to me, he goes, man, I love your feel-good segment. And so I appreciate it, and I was glad to see that John is on the mend as well from knee surgery and able to get out to Blind Owl and enjoy that occasion earlier this week. All right, let's talk about Crawford County High School. Southern Indiana, here within the state. This is the opening week of, and we are right into the midst of sectional play, correct, Eddie?
Yeah, sectional play starts tonight for classes 1, 2, 3, and 4A. Classes 5 and 6A are off this week. They will start their sectional play next Friday night.
How about Crawford County, who going into the sectionals was wanting to just simply find an uptick? They wanted to find something positive, right? And this is the beauty of high school sports. High school sports is about so much more in the IHSAA than simply going out and trying to get a scholarship. There's so many kids that go out. It's about learning teamwork. It's about learning your role. Sometimes it's about, quite frankly, getting cut from a team and then bouncing back. And it's also just about continuing to go out. And I have so much respect for different teams and different players that go out and the results just don't go their way, and yet they're there again the next Friday and the next Friday. And I always think about in the original Rocky movie when Apollo finally knocks Rocky down and turns around and is exhausted but is kind of gloating to the audience and turns around and Rocky is getting up, and Apollo, you see his shoulders just dip because he's like, I can't believe it. I can't believe this guy is getting back up off the mat. And Rocky doesn't win the bout. Sorry for the spoiler alert. But he acts as if he did, essentially, when Adrian comes out because of the fact that he won for himself because he got up off the mat. Crawford County this year in football has been outscored going into their season finale 367-40. They have had games where it would be very easy for a lot of kids to just say, enough is enough, no mas. They lost their last game to West Washington 34-0. They got beat by Paoli 62-7. They got beat by Springs Valley 70-0. They got beat by Perry Central 44-0. They opened by getting beaten by Switzerland County 39-0. Brown County beat them 24-0. But they were kind of used to it because they've lost 28 straight games. 28 straight games for the Wolfpack. And then they said, you know what? I know that we opened sectionals with Tell City, but we got to do something here, and we got to get it right. And lo and behold, they go out against Clarksville last week, 24-16. 28-game win streak is over. And I don't say that to make light of the fact that they lost 28 straight or they lost those games in that kind of fashion. It's the fact that high school sports is about young people learning that sometimes when things don't go your way, you just keep working, and eventually things are going to fall your way. And so instead of saying they're going into the season or the end of the season on a 28-game or 29-game losing streak, I'm simply going to say they're going into the tournament as hot as anybody because they're going in on a win streak, going in taking on Tell City. But the dedication it takes, there are so many teams in high school football because of the fact that it's, you have small schools going up against bigger schools, and, it's what made the high school basketball tournament so endearing to so many people is the fact that kids just wanted their chance. But I applaud and commend for all of the athletes that are going to be taking place on Friday night under the lights, getting underway, no matter whether they are at the number one team in the state, the best team in the state, the biggest school in the state, or whether they are at a smaller school that is looking for their own private victory. Simply wish all of them the best. Eddie, there's one of them that's closer to home here on the south side that also is a newer program that is starting to find itself its own greener pastures.
Yeah, that is correct, Jake. Received a tweet this morning from Chris. He was like, hey, Eddie, I wish some more attention could be given to Greenwood Christian Academy, located off Main Street in Greenwood. This is their third year of existence in football. They have one of the best players in the state. It's their quarterback, Trey Dobson. He's fourth in total offense. He is top 50 in the state when it comes to passing yards, and this has a little bit of a connection as well to the station because tonight in sectional 47 they have a home game. They're playing at Beech Grove because they don't have a facility yet, just because of their just starting 3 years ago. My brother actually played them in baseball when they first opened, and I was actually rather impressed because I had no idea who Greenwood Christian Academy was, and they were actually a very competitive team in year number one right out of the gate in baseball. And lo and behold, in football, they are getting better and better each season, 2-2 in their inaugural year. Last year, they're 5-4. This year, they are 7-2. And tonight in sectional 47 at 7 o'clock at Beech Grove, they're taking on Eastern Green.
Oh, I thought that you said they were taking on Beech Grove. Sorry, they're at Beech Grove taking on Eastern Green.
That is correct.
Uh-oh. That's going to be a tough one for John to see his alma mater drop, right?
Yeah.
We wish the best for both schools, right?
Absolutely. In terms of Trey Dobson, their quarterback, he's also top 50 nationally. That is not just here in the state of Indiana. That is across the country in terms of total yards of offense. So hats off to Greenwood Christian Academy on their great season so far, and hopefully they can continue building on that.
Best of luck to every school in trying to find their own victory, even if the scoreboard doesn't say it. I know it's a cliche, but there's a lot of truth to it as well. And for your own health, again, Franciscan Health is the place when it comes to your heart screens. It is very simple to do. It is non-invasive and just $49. FranciscanHealth.org/screening bundles. You can always call 833-238-0688. I don't expect you to remember 833-238-0688. You can always text me for that number or simply Google Franciscan Health in terms of the heart scan, and you will find all of the information right there. We'll come back. We'll get Jimmy's plays of the day and give you our predictions for Colts and Texans on this Friday.
Today's plays of the day brought to you by the fine folks at Greenfield Signs and Lighting. Greenfield Signs, a professional, comprehensive sign company with 2 locations in central Indiana. They'll take your signage ideas and take hold of the project from design all the way to delivery. Family-owned and managed business for more than 4 generations. You don't often get a second chance to make a first impression. Make the most out of your first opportunity by visiting Greenfield Signs and Lighting. For more information, go to greenfieldsigns.com. Today's plays of the day extended as well into the weekend. This has been a favorite throughout the entirety of this calendar year. MLS playoffs get started today. We will take Lionel Messi of Inter Miami as an anytime goal scorer this afternoon. I'd advise you to shop around on that. We don't name drop sports books on the program for just sponsorship purposes, but shop around. You can find still good value on a Lionel Messi goal.
Is there a
tonight
tip or a hint that you can
Inter
give
Miami
towards the best book to go out there, Jimmy?
They also sell clothing.
Really?
They're also a clothing company. That's the biggest hint that I can give you there. Additionally, Game 1 of the World Series gets underway tonight in Los Angeles as the Yankees take the Dodgers. Give me Aaron Judge to hit a homer tonight. I will take Aaron Judge.
So you're
to
a fan
lead the park.
of the Yankees, right, Jimmy?
I am indeed a fan of the Yankees. There is a bit of emotional betting going on there, but I think Aaron Judge, he's going to be a key if New York's going to win it. He needs to get out of his sluggishness that's been present throughout these playoffs, though he still has found a way to hit a couple home runs. For the weekend, I will lay the 5.5 on the Indiana Hoosiers as they take on Washington. Game days there are going to be massive. Like we mentioned, get there early if you want to be a part of those festivities. I'm talking really early, like Eddie Garrison level early if you're wanting to make it out there. Another Saturday bet for you. I'll take Texas A&M to win the money line over LSU. That game in Aggie land as Texas A&M looks to continue their winning ways. Sunday slate for the NFL. I'll take the Bengals on the money line over the Eagles. I will also take the Bills on the road against Seattle. That Cincinnati game, by the way, in Cincinnati when they welcome Philadelphia. And I'll scoop the 9.5 on the Las Vegas Raiders as they host the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll hold the Colts prediction for later. Those are my plays of the day. Eddie, anything from you?
Yeah, I've got 4 bets tonight in the association, 2 of which are on the same player. Taking Trey Man.
Say NBA. It's cool. Most people know what that is.
People also know what the association is, Jake. It's the only association.
Hashtag this league.
That's right. That's right. Trey Mann for the Charlotte Hornets, over 13.5 points and over 1.5 threes. No Brandon Miller. He's out for at least a week, and he saw the primary bump up in minutes, played 30 in their game number 1 win that was for the Hornets. So I'm taking him over 13.5 points and 1.5 threes. How about T.J. McConnell off the bench today for the Indiana Pacers, over 8.5 points. Consider that pretty much a lot because it's pretty much him and Benedict Mathurin as the scoring of that second unit for the Sirs. And then Jalen Duren for the Detroit Pistons. I'll be taking him to register a double-double tonight against the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Those are your plays of the day. Jake, you mentioned it. Monster Sports Weekend. I know we're going to get to Colts predictions here in a second, but it really starts tomorrow with game day. Of course, high school sectional play getting underway for some classes tonight. That'll be big, but then you got implications across the board in college football from Notre Dame to Navy to IU and Washington.
Indiana handles Washington, no question about it. What's the line in that game?
5.5.
Yeah, come on.
I laid the 5.5 there for the Hoosiers.
All day.
And
Indiana
twice on
covers.
Saturdays?
Yes.
Nice.
I mean, come on. Now, here we go. Do you have the breaking news sounder, Eddie, by chance? I just got this alert from our friends at ESPN. A trade proposal in your ESPN Fantasy Football League.
Yeah, I pulled that trade back, by the way.
Oh, so it's old news?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I canceled it.
So there was show negotiation potentially, and then you backed off?
Yeah, because I realized it didn't make sense for either one of us.
Well, I don't know.
Did the terms of the trade
Eddie was
leak?
offering to me
Okay.
David Montgomery and DK Metcalf in exchange for Tyreek Hill. Eddie, who clearly has not watched Miami the last month, looking for Tyreek Hill.
Tua's coming back. Eddie looking for a flyer there. Is Metcalf out long-term, or is that a week-to-week type of thing for him?
I think week-to-week.
Okay. So, both those are 2 going into the season star wide receivers that have been anything but advertised what they're supposed to be. Metcalf more so than Hill. He's been better, but I don't know.
Problem is that I already have Mr. Waddle. So.
Okay, yeah, I don't like to double up on.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah. Okay,
the Indiana-Washington game, Indiana handles that no problem whatsoever, right? That's number 1. I think Notre Dame and Navy is going to be a really good game to watch, be a fun one. But let's get to what happens in Houston. I'm fascinated by it because I do feel like with the Colts getting healthy, this feels like one they could go down there and surprise people. Am I totally off base on that?
I don't think you're off base on it because there's always a chance in these divisional matchups, and this is, as you put it, a boulder in the stream game. That's not where I see the game going. I don't know if we've formally opened the door now for predictions yet or not, but I think I have Houston. I'll give the score in a second, but I think they win this game pretty comfortably. I think it's a show of just how far the gap is, both between these two organizations and the two quarterbacks that represent them.
What did you say your score is?
30-17 Texans.
Wow. Okay, Eddie?
See, I've been going back and forth on this all week on Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen on Wednesday. I said
Where can you get that, by the way?
Anywhere you download your podcast.
Okay, good. All right.
Anywhere. And as the week's gone on, the more I've thought about it, the more I've looked at the injury report for the Colts and the Texans. I'm taking Indianapolis to win. I've got them winning 20-17. The addition of Jonathan Taylor will help a lot.
Matt Gay walk-off?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I think there is some signs of a potential letdown for Houston. Post Nico Collins injury, they have not been good offensively. C.J. Stroud has struggled to get it going, and if you're asking me what type of receiver the Colts struggle to guard right now, that's probably a guy like Nico because they don't have the size. And I just wonder if DeForest Buckner's back out there and they can stop the run, I legitimately think there's a good chance the Colts can win this game.
And that's fair. I mean, it does feel like one where they're getting ready to go through the gauntlet, right? And you almost wonder if it gives like a false hope if they win because then people are like, whoa, but is Minnesota now as daunting as we thought? I mean, and by the way, the world's worst non-call ever on a face mask last night.
It's pretty bad.
But the Rams look pretty good against Minnesota, and the Colts have, if they're healthy, the same number of weapons. I realize that's a week away, but I'm saying, does this jumpstart things? Possibly.
I think it's more of the same from the week one matchup. I think you see a great day for Joe Mixon. I think Diggs' fingerprints are all over this game. To Eddie's point, he is correct. The Nico Collins absence is noteworthy, but I think this is a game where the Colts can't get home pressure and the secondary gets torched again.
I'll say 30-28 Houston wins. I agree that Mixon is a real handful for them, right? I'm kind of envious of John, man. He's out one of the best kept. Well, I shouldn't say best kept secrets. People know about it, but a super cool joint, Sam's Silver Circle.
Nice.
You guys been there?
I've not, no.
Great place, right on the edge of Fountain Square. It's very cool. John is there, so plenty of time to get out and enjoy a cold beverage. Diet Coke's perfectly sufficient. And listen to John from now until 6 o'clock. We will be back with you, of course, at noon on Monday. Thank you to Larry Triplet for joining us on the program today. Thank you also to Kevin Bowen. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Enjoy the games, and we will talk to you on Monday on Query & Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.